Since its release in 2008, Slumdog Millionaire has become a worldwide sensation. Directed by British filmmaker Danny Boyle, it won every major award, including Best Picture at the Oscars. The story takes place in the poverty-stricken area of Mumbai, India, where street children wander the shanty towns and a young man finds himself on India's version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The film uses every question asked to lead the audience back into his difficult life. The movie has been met with criticism for what some perceive as its exploitation of the public health conditions in the slums, as well as local children used. The children were low paid for their work, and after a worldwide tour to promote the movie, returned home to the very conditions depicted in the film. To understand the Indian community's response to the film, I've sought the opinion of people from the region.
It was a nice movie. Very controversial, I guess, in a lot of different ways. But it was kind of a feel-good movie. At the end, it was like the love got together.
Actually, I think it was a little formulaic. I've been watching Indian movies all my life, and perhaps the Western world hasn't seen them, so I actually thought it was a little formulaic, a little predictable, but very well made, and I enjoyed it.
I thought it was overhyped. I thought that, especially coming from knowing the Indian movie industry, there are a lot better products out there. But unfortunately, because it doesn't sort of get into the world market, and this had a non-Indian director, so it got the hype, so it got out into the world market, and then, in my opinion, the way the movie, once it gets hype, that's really all that drives it, not necessarily the spectacular story that was in there. So I think it was a little overhyped, but it ultimately turned out to be a good thing for us in India.
I guess because it was made by a British director, number one. If it was made by an Indian director, nobody would have paid any attention to it. But, it was made by British. They're trying to show, they usually try to bring out stuff that is degrading. And they bring it out and people would love to see it. But there are a lot of other ways you can bring it out in open and you can show it. There are other directors in India who bring out the similar kind of issues in different manner, and which is more acceptable. And that director's name is Meera Nair. I don't know if you ever seen her movies or not, but her movie names are like Earth, Water, and something similar to those kind of movies. There are like 4 movies she made, but she brings out the issues. But there are there are ways of bringing it out, and what Danny Boyle did was totally different.
It's a story of an underdog who rises from what seems to be an impossible situation to a very possible situation. The aim is not the money at the end of the game, but it is to get something that he's wanting, which is true love, or something he's always felt. With the series of events that he undergoes, I think he achieves that, but only because of his life experience. Also, it's, rising out of the slums and, getting to what he needs to get to.
My personal opinion, that the developed world likes to think that the developing world is still this impoverished, backwards sort of parts of the world, and any story that sort of highlights those kind of issues sell well in the developed world. It's sort of like, any news coverage that ever happens in America, and to some degree in Britain and Europe and everywhere else, when they talk about the developing world, they almost always send a reporter to stand in front of a slum somewhere, or some poor kid who's begging on the street, and that's always they do the report like, oh, new economic forum coming to India, except they show like these poor kids in the background running around, which is it's true, it exists, but that's not all that exists. You know, they don't show the high-end stuff that exists in a lot of the developing world and stuff. So.
Well, the slum area is a very small percentage of the people, the population. Of course, Bombay is huge. There are so many millions of people living in there. And the slums are maybe 10% of the population. There are a lot of other people who have total access to everything. They have good health care. They have money. They have everything. That you don't see. You're only seeing something that is small percentage. And yes, I mean, they have problems because they are all migrated to that area to find, in looking for jobs, looking for life, and because they cannot find it any other way. And most of these people are also, they do not have other family support system. So they are living there alone. And they have no other way of living but living in little shanty towns or whatever they can find. They find a little place, nobody's looking, they would go and build a place, build a couple of walls, and they call that their home. They don't have to pay rent, they don't have to pay anything in there.
What you saw in the movie were the slums. The slums are really dirty, very unsanitary, and unfortunately, I've been there. I've done some rotations there in that kind of an area of a slum. So they are they are very filthy. Accurate portrayal, they filmed it on location, which is exactly where it is. Yeah, I think it is an accurate portrayal. What happens to the children, I would never know. What kind of, the abuse that they undergo, but I'm sure it exists. I don't doubt that it doesn't. But yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Very much so. So anyone who's ever gone to Mumbai and you take the car ride or the train ride or whatever from any of the two airports to the center of town, you can't ignore the fact that you drive right through the slums that they show in Slumdog Millionaire. And it looks exactly the same. There's no overhyping, underhyping of it. It's a very... Mumbai is one of these weird places where it's where India's ultra-rich live, and it's where India's ultra-poor live. Right now, India's richest man is building $1 billion personal home, which will be the world's most expensive personal home once it's finished.
I would blame the politicians who are really not interested in anything else but getting their votes. So they're not going to change too many things because this is an easy catchment area. They would go and get their vote. Right before the elections, there's so many things going on there that everybody gets new pots and pans. Everybody gets lots of grains, like wheat and rice and all that stuff to make, food and all that stuff, because they're buying their vote, So, and they really don't have any other interest in doing anything else.
There are so many things that could be done. But I think a lot of it, which is kind of sad to say, is also the mentality of the people. I think they don't want to rise out of a better situation. Sometimes it sounds horrible to say, but I think, as a global community, you can do everything, charities and all that stuff, space, sanitation, those are the basic things that need to be taken care of. Of course, along with poverty, create more jobs, so that people don't have to live in these conditions, don't have to live in tarps and, in these places where there's no sidewalks or anything like that. It is true. This is exactly what it does look like. People are sleeping anywhere and everywhere they can because they have no space. This is not just a problem of India, but Africa, any third world country. We all undergo those kind of issues. That is going to be forever. That's never going to stop. Poverty and stuff. You have to find solutions.
Because a good chunk of the masses in India are still illiterate or underliterate. And politicians use religion, they use social systems, they use caste-based systems, despite the fact that all of those are illegal, to sort of get people into identify themselves as either a caste or a particular religion, and they use that to get people to vote on emotions rather than what have they really done for you. And sometimes it's as out in your face as if you vote for our party, you get a color TV. You vote for our party, we give you food for a year. And all of those are theoretically legal because it's actually not directly the politician giving it, but that's the ultimate goal, where the political parties and supporters of them, they'll literally the day of an election drive around towns that they know is their stronghold, literally force people to be bused to the polling stations, have them vote for the party, and they watch them to make sure that they vote only for the party, and then they reward them for that loyalty. So in a system like that, it gets very hard for reformers to come in, because most places where big reforms happen, it's usually that middle class, educated class that sort of tries to think of the big picture, and that's still a small minority.
Number one issue should be education. If you educate the people, they would change. They would change it, or they would be willing to change things. It's not something, if you give them something, it's not going to be any value to them. They will never understand the total value of something that is just given to them. They need to work for it. They need to go educate themselves first. But here, you see those kids and everyone, they're trying to sell little things, and, they will just, there will be outside little trinkets. They're selling trinkets, making a few bucks here and there, and that's about it. And they really do not have any solid education.
This is the thing. It's a global issue. I think it's the mentality of the people that have to understand if you get up and work. You can't be sitting out on the road and beg. If a child offers, to sweep your floors for the house, you'll give them a few pennies. So you'll teach them work ethic. They'll know that they can't go out to the street and beg. That there's money in work, and if you work, leads you to a better lifestyle, brings you out of poverty. I think many people don't see it that way, or I don't know what they're taught. And they see other people doing it. They think it's okay, it's easier to go out and just put your hand out there. It's not.
India has enormous resources that gets wasted in the political class. The political class sort of just sucks up resources in the sense that every new election cycle that comes through and a new party gets into office, they renegotiate every single contract that exists, because as they renegotiate the contracts is how they get their bribes. So there's very limited sort of steady stream increase of anything. So it's like it's getting accomplished. The next politician comes into office, he sends it back to step 0. They start again, and then the next politician comes in, goes back to step 0. So it takes a lot of recycling to get a project going. And sometimes even after a project is literally ready to open its doors, it can get shut down.
I don't think he has a responsibility for doing anything in there. He's just bringing out something that he sees. But I think he just brought out the issue. The issue is always there. And you will see the similar kind of issues if you go in, let's say in South Bronx somewhere, and you go and walk into the projects. You will see most of the same issues everywhere. If somebody made a movie similar like that in the Bronx, you will see a lot of things that goes on around here that is similar to there. I mean, the movie was funny at times. Movie was there were a lot of points in there. The things that goes on in the community where children are abducted and they are made to beg, and they were injured to make sure that they would continue to beg, and the guy who kidnaps them, he makes the money. So I mean, there are a lot of other issues, but I don't see he has any responsibility in doing any changes.
Just because he went out and made a film, no. Everybody who lives in India, everybody who doesn't live in India, who lives in other countries, who has the means to help develop schools, wells, teach them how to farm, whatever it is. You want to teach the man to fish. You don't want to just feed the man. It's not Danny Boyle's responsibility. It's our responsibility as human beings to all pitch in and do something.
It's the government's responsibility. Fixing 4 or 5 kids' lives is not going to fix, the million people that probably are in those slums. And a lot of those people are, relatively speaking, for Indian culture, lower middle class people. So they're not poor people that live there necessarily. There are local industries that exist inside the slums. So people hear slum, they think it's the dirt poor, no technical skills, they're just begging for their lives and stuff like that. But that particular slum is a very organized slum because it's people that have come from other parts of India and sort of settled there without permanent housing, which is what defines it as a slum. But there are actually very, big cottage industries that exist inside those slums where there are, good technical, what we would call vocationally trained people that do whatever those tasks are.
At the conclusion of Slumdog Millionaire, Jamal wins the big prize and gets the girl. What impact the film will have on the residents of the slums is up for debate. Will the movie just be regulated to DVD shows, or would it bring about a real change in India's government for improving conditions that exist there?